I didn't come here to talk about health care, but since you brought it up, my name is Ernest Fishman. I'm president of Bright Hill Press in Treadwell. Where's that? Everybody know where it is? Sure. What is your health care coverage? What do you have?
Sure. I have a federal employees health care plan.
I do too. Let me talk about that.
Same as every other federal employee.
Right. I have the same plan because I'm working for the Census Bureau for the last 12 years. This is my retirement job.
Okay.
And if you don't have to invent anything. It's already out there. There are how many federal employees? 20 million? Millions.
No, but millions.
And they all have wonderful coverage. I have wonderful coverage. I'm walking around with body parts I wasn't born with, and it was all paid for. It was all paid for with the federal health care system.
Yep.
It may not look to look at me, but I guess I'm old enough for Medicare too. So I have that. And the combination of the two, you don't need anything else. I keep getting flooded with stuff. You have this Medicare option. I throw them all away because I have the best, and so do you. And there's no reason why, if you and I have all this wonderful coverage that's affordable.
And it's driven by an exchange, which is the concept we're talking about replicating, which makes sense. So the way the federal plan works is federal government pays for part of it, I pay for part of it. I paid in December, I think it was about $350 for my family coverage, and the federal government paid the other portion of it. So like a lot of businesses, it's a co-sharing thing.
There's another thing, and that's the cost of what they're paying for. And they negotiate with who's going to run the program. My program is run by Blue Cross. Ooh, that's a terrible name if you want to go out and buy it privately. Oh, yeah. And you probably couldn't afford it.
Well, so that's what I was going to say. The benefit is it is a big exchange, because to get access to those millions of customers, the companies compete with each other, and there's a bunch of options you can pick from, and they have to try to show the best price. And that's a model. That's very much the model of the House and the Senate bills in terms of having an exchange.
Except for the amount.
But I'm very much favorably inclined to that. If we could just open up the federal employees plan and allow everybody to participate, your company could work out what share they wanted to pay and you pay the rest. That's a very simple solution that we've been unable to execute, but should have done a long time ago, in my opinion. It's very simple. It's not cheap, because health insurance is not cheap, and if your company's not paying a big piece of it, it's still expensive. But in my case, the federal government picks up a big share of it, and then I pick up a share. But we're not going to come up with a solution where you can buy health insurance for $1. These are all going to cost money because we get a lot of medical care. But it's a good model because it is an exchange, there is competition, and you do get buying power. Anyway, question in the back.
My name is Brett Honeyke. I'm a retired dairyman, and I'm also the chairman of the Watershed Agricultural Council. Our dairy industry, as you well know, is in very dire straits. The last time I spoke to you was up at Allen Lake Farms this past summer. Since then, in our situation, we had a young dairyman that was on our farm. We loaded his cows this past Monday. It just wasn't going to work for him another summer. My question for you is, since the time that we spoke at Allen Lake until now, give me a synopsis of what progress has been made. Hopefully progress has been made, because we're going to lose this industry in this state if we don't do something.
Sure. Well, since we were at the Allen Lake farm, and the big thing that happened was we did an appropriation to try to get us through the bottom, which was the $350 million that came through with the budget at the end of the year. $290 million of that was direct payments that went out to all the farms, capped on size, so it was much more heavily weighted towards the small farmers versus those big farms in California and Idaho and New Mexico. And $60 million of it went to purchasing cheese to try to prop up the prices in the market to take some of that demand off. So that's the biggest single thing that's gone on. It was $350 million, and I think that along with, unfortunately, some of the industry consolidating, we have started to see the prices a little bit better, at least in the last few milk checks that I've been hearing about from people. We've been getting higher prices, but that's been the short-term step that was taken to try to get people through the winter, because it was so bad last year, and everybody is hurting.
But long term, we talked about having a group which I think has been formed by the Department of Agriculture to look at the pricing structure, because the pricing structure is absolutely antiquated and it's not going to work anymore.
You're right.
It's got to be fair. It's got to be fair to the dairyman. It's got to be fair to the processor, the consumer. There has to be an export component to it. So, you know, it's a huge issue. But my fear is, I'll tell you exactly what my fear is, that when the price of milk is going to rise a little bit, this issue is going to fall right off the table, and a revamping of the pricing structure is not going to happen. Now, when I looked at the list of people that were on that panel, I was a little disappointed because it's recycling the same people who put these pricing structures into place in the first place. So it gets awful frustrating. We're going to lose this. I mean, I got dairymen that we service through in the Watershed Agricultural Council that put, a considerable amount of money for water quality on these farms, and they're going to go out of business. It's terrible.
No, you're absolutely right. There is people that aren't in the middle of it in the way that we are in the 20th District do lose focus on it once the crisis passes. And once you're trying to take the different interests of the processors and the producers and everybody, it does require some will to push it forward to a conclusion, because obviously, one side wants higher prices, one side wants lower prices. There's a little bit of tension there. So you're right. I don't think that we're losing steam on coming up with a longer-term solution. Right now, you know this, most people don't, we have 5 different price support systems for dairy that were put in 5 different decades. Each one kind of approached the problem in different ways, and they're just a mess when you add it all up. It's a total mess. I spent months, I continue to have to try to keep refreshing how it all works, because it's so complicated. If you don't think about it for a week, you've forgotten how the nuances of all these different things overlay with each other. It's ridiculously complicated. And so we do have to get it changed. I don't think we've lost momentum entirely, but you're right, there is a lack of focus from people who don't think about it as much when the immediate crisis passes. So we're going to keep working on it. I talk to Colin Peterson about it regularly, who's the chair of the House Ag Committee from Minnesota. He's also got a lot of dairy in his district, and he's very committed to getting this move forward and come up with a much more equitable and clearer and easier system for everybody.
Hi, Glenn Faulkner from the Martyrdale Telephone Company. I want to thank you for your support of the ION funding in round 1 of the stimulus broadband initiative. Martyrdale Telephone, along with the ION group, is looking to submit a second round funding to continue to extend that process into the rural areas where broadband is not available. And we're just hoping to secure your support for that project in the region and in the county.
Yep. So Mark Luciano in my office, I think, is talking to ION regularly. He's in my office in Glens Falls, and he's kind of our point person on broadband stuff. And Benedict, who's here, can give you a card, but Mark he's in the Glens Falls office, and he works on this almost every day. It's kind of the thing that we spend most of our time on, and he's involved with a lot of the different groups around the district that are working on applications, and we're trying to push them all forward and get as much as we can into the district. So absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Could you first tell us what ION is? And secondly, could you comment about gas drilling in the Catskills and the relationship between property owners here who want it and New York City who doesn't want it?
Yeah, fun. Only the fun questions get to stay around. So ION is a company that was formed. It's a consortium of 12 rural telephone companies that serve rural areas across upstate New York. They went together to try to get scale and heft to put in a fiber optic ring all around upstate New York that would be open to other small businesses to do broadband internet access and cellular telephone access for people in rural areas. So they're going to each one do their own service in their areas, but in the parts of the state that those 12 companies don't cover, where somebody might have Verizon or somebody else, then they would open it up to the public. Unlike generally when Verizon or Time Warner builds their network, it's not open to the public. Only they can hang off of it. The idea behind this network is to be open to everybody, so other small businesses can hang off of it, and we can have real competition out there. And those are the projects that the federal government's helping, because we know that a lot of our small communities will never get broadband internet access out at the end of the line. It's akin to rural electrification in the 1930s. The government had to be part of making that happen because the infrastructure is expensive, but it is an absolute necessity to our small towns that we have it. And that's the right place, from my perspective, for federal dollars to be invested in that kind of infrastructure. And then you let the small businesses flourish and do whatever they're going to do and go crazy. I don't try to pick all the winners. I don't try to, at the federal level in Washington, go, well, this is a good 3-person company and that's a bad one and you get money and you don't. We'll never be good at that. That'll be entirely political. But we can be better at helping with millions of dollars to build out the infrastructure and then let the marketplace pick who's going to win on top of that. And that's what ION is part of doing. And the